My name is Sophia Carter, and I'm 30 years old. For years, I've lived like a ghost right here in Washington and haunted by the death of my father, a senator they said committed suicide. I knew it was a lie. Everything shattered when an anonymous email landed in my inbox with a single document attached. Inside, a chilling line read, "Target neutralized." My father had been murdered by a shadow organization called Silent Eagle. But the most horrific truth was on the final page, where I saw the name that signed his death warrant, Senator Charles Hammond. This was my father's closest friend, the man who delivered the eulogy at his funeral and promised to carry on his legacy. He thought he had buried the truth along with my father, but he was wrong. When he signed that death warrant, he didn't just kill an enemy. He turned his victim's own daughter into the weapon that would burn his. I was 30 years old when I realized that my life was still being written by a tragedy I never accepted. People saw me as driven, ambitious, full of ideals. They said I was one of the new voices in Washington, someone who still believed politics could change lives. But the truth is, everything I did was haunted by the shadow of my father. He had been a senator, a reformer, the kind of man who believed his job was a sacred trust. And then one night he was found hanging in his study. The police called it suicide. The newspapers called it a fall from grace. I called it a lie. The official story never sat right with me. My father had been under pressure, yes. There were rumors of a scandal, whispers about corporate donors and backroom deals, but I knew him. I knew the way his mind worked, the stubborn fire that drove him. He had flaws, he had enemies, but he was not the kind of man who would surrender to despair. He had always told me the most dangerous thing you can do in Washington is stand between powerful men and their money. And he had stood there too many times. For years, I tried to live with it. I told myself the truth did not matter. What mattered was carrying on his work, keeping his ideals alive. So I buried myself in activism. I organized campaigns, gave speeches, worked on bills that promised reform. On the outside, I looked like a woman on fire with purpose. On the inside, I was cold, always wondering who had decided my father should die and why no one had the courage to speak the truth. Then one rainy night, an email changed everything. I came home soaked and exhausted from another endless strategy meeting. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of wine, and opened my laptop just to clear the inbox before collapsing into bed. Buried among junk mail and newsletters was a message with no subject, no sender. Just one attachment. Every instinct told me to delete it. I had seen enough disinformation campaigns to know how dangerous anonymous files could be. But curiosity overpowered caution. I clicked. The document was a memo. The header was from a private security contractor that worked closely with intelligence agencies. The date was a week before my father's death. The text was dry, clinical, full of bureaucratic jargon about asset containment and information management. But one line cut through everything, target neutralized. My throat closed. I reread it again and again, each time feeling the ground slip further from beneath me. My father was the target. Neutralized was their word for murdered. He had not killed himself. He had been eliminated. I sat frozen for hours, staring at the screen until the words burned into my vision. At some point, I whispered aloud, though no one was there to hear me. "Dad, what did they do to you?" That night, I barely slept. My thoughts raced in circles, looping back to every strange moment in the last weeks of his life. His late-night calls, his warning that I should be careful who I trusted, the way he hugged me tighter than usual the last time we met. I had ignored the signs, told myself I was being paranoid. Now it all made sense. He had known they were coming for him. By dawn, I knew I could not stay quiet, but I also knew I was in danger. Whoever sent me that memo wanted me to act, but they also wanted me exposed. The question was, who could I trust? The first person who came to mind was Lucas. He was a policy advisor at the nonprofit where I worked. We had been friends for years, and for the past year something more. It was not a simple relationship. He was cautious where I was reckless, pragmatic where I was idealistic, but he had always been someone I could lean on. I called him and asked to meet. We chose a diner near DuPont Circle, a place where lobbyists and staffers often grabbed late meals, noisy enough to give us cover. He slid into the booth across from me, shaking the rain off his jacket. "You look terrible, Soph. Did you even sleep?" "Not much," I admitted. "I found something about my father." His expression tightened. "Sophia, we have been through this. It has been years. You cannot keep no, listen. This is different." I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the memo silently, his jaw working. "Where did this come from?" he asked. "Anonymous email. No sender, just that. Do you realize what you are holding? If this is real, this is explosive. It could destroy careers, topple people. It could explain everything, I shot back. It could prove he was murdered. Lucas lowered his voice, or it could be bait. A trap to pull you in. Maybe, I said, but I have to know. He reached across the table, covering my hand with his. Promise me you will not do anything stupid. Promise me you will be careful. I nodded, but inside I knew my mind was already made up. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. A black SUV parked outside my apartment longer than usual. A man in a gray coat standing at the corner near my office 2 mornings in a row. Static on my phone whenever I spoke about the memo. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it was paranoia. Or maybe someone already knew I had the file. I needed help, but not from anyone inside the system. That was when I thought of David. Years ago, he had been one of the best investigative journalists in the city. He had exposed corruption in defense contracts, corporate lobbying, intelligence overreach. Then one story pushed too far. He accused a sitting senator of collusion with private intelligence firms. Within months, he was discredited, fired, blacklisted. Most people forgot about him. I never did. It took me 2 days to track him down. He lived above a laundromat in Arlington, in an apartment that smelled of mildew and whiskey. When he opened the door, he looked older than I remembered, his beard unkempt, his eyes bloodshot. Well, if it isn't the rising star of reform politics, he said with a bitter laugh. To what do I owe the honor? I stepped inside without asking. I need your help. He eyed me warily. People only come here when they are desperate. What kind of trouble are you in? I showed him the memo. He let out a low whistle. Silent Eagle, I have heard whispers about this for years. Where the hell did you get this? It came to me, I said, anonymous. He dropped into a chair, rubbing his temples. Jesus Christ, you have no idea what this means. I know exactly what it means. My father was murdered. David poured himself a drink, his hand shaking slightly. Proves nothing on its own. But it lines up with things I have heard. If you really want to chase this, it is going to cost you everything. I straightened my shoulders. I already lost everything that mattered when they took him from me. He studied me for a long time, then finally nodded. All right, I will help. But once you step into this world, there is no stepping back. As I left his apartment that night, the streets felt colder than usual. Every shadow looked like it was watching me. Every sound made my heart race. But underneath the fear was something I had not felt in years. Purpose. I was no longer a daughter haunted by suspicion. I was an investigator, a fighter. I was going to uncover the truth. The next week blurred into a haze of research, late-night meetings, and constant anxiety. David pulled strings with old contacts, men and women who had once trusted him before the establishment destroyed his career. Some slammed doors in his face. Others whispered warnings. Silent Eagle was real, they said. It was a joint operation between corrupt politicians, private contractors, and elements inside intelligence. Its purpose was to neutralize threats like my father. At night, I kept replaying my last conversation with him. We had dinner 2 weeks before he died. He was distracted, checking his phone constantly, but when I pressed him, he just smiled tightly and said, "Do not worry about me, Sophie. Worry about yourself. Stay away from the fire." I never understood then. Now I did. He had been protecting me. The more I dug, the more dangerous it became. One night, my apartment was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but my desk drawers were ransacked, my files scattered. Whoever it was had been looking for something. The memo, luckily I had hidden it at David's place. When I told Lucas about the break-in, he looked shaken. "Sophia, this is exactly what I warned you about. You are playing with fire." I glared at him. "Then help me. Stand with me." He hesitated. His eyes darted away. "I cannot. You do not understand how deep this goes." That was when doubt first crept in. Was he scared for me or scared of what the truth might mean for him? Still, I pressed forward. I spent nights with David poring over old campaign finance records, defense contracts, donor lists. Patterns began to emerge. My father had been digging into a slush fund tied to military contracts. Billions siphoned through shell companies, funneled back into political campaigns. He had threatened to expose it. Silent Eagle had silenced him instead. The more I learned, the heavier the weight in my chest grew. But beneath the grief, something new was rising. Anger. Not the quiet ache I had carried for years, but sharp, burning anger. They thought they could erase him with a staged suicide. They thought they could scare me into silence. They were wrong. One night as I stood by my apartment window, watching the glow of the Capitol in the distance, I whispered aloud, "I will not stop, Dad. I will finish what you started, even if it kills me." And in the silence that followed, I almost imagined I could hear his voice answering back. "That's my girl. The city looked different once you carried a secret like mine." Washington had always been a place of masks, but after finding that memo, I started seeing ghosts behind every polite smile. Marble hallways that once felt noble now looked like stage sets hiding something rotten behind the walls. The Capitol dome still glowed at night, but to me it no longer represented deals. It was a warning light, a beacon that reminded me how small one person could feel when standing against a machine built on silence and fear. I kept telling myself I was prepared for this, that I had been preparing for years without knowing it. But the truth is I was scared. Every time I left my apartment, I felt eyes on me. Every phone call carried a faint echo, as if someone was listening on the other end. A black SUV appeared outside my building twice in the same week, engine idling, windows tinted so dark I could not see inside. When I walked past it, I felt a shiver run down my spine, as though the people inside already knew everything I was about to do. Still, I pushed forward. David's apartment in Arlington became our command post. It was a rundown place above a laundromat, the kind of building most people overlooked, which was exactly why it worked. The air always smelled like detergent from the machines downstairs mixed with his chain smoking and stale whiskey. His kitchen table disappeared under piles of paper. Campaign finance records, old newspaper clippings, leaked memos, scraps of notes scribbled on napkins. We lived inside that chaos for hours, chasing connections, arguing over leads, and piecing together a puzzle neither of us could see fully yet. One night he looked up from a stack of papers, his eyes bloodshot but sharp. "You understand what this is, Sophia. This isn't just some scandal. This is the system itself, a machine designed to protect itself, and once your father got close to the truth, they chewed him up." I pressed my hands against my forehead. I already knew the system was broken. I didn't know it was willing to kill. David let out a bitter laugh. "Then you haven't been paying attention. Washington doesn't assassinate with bullets. It strangles people with secrets and rumors, and if that fails, it makes sure the problem disappears. Your father was a problem, they made him disappear." I sat back, staring at the mess of papers, my chest tight. "So what now? How do we fight something this big?" David leaned forward, his voice low and hard. "We don't try to take down the whole monster at once. That's suicide. We find one piece, one undeniable truth that the public can't ignore, and we drag it into the light. Then another. And another, until the whole damn thing unravels." His words gave me both hope and fear, because he was right, but he was also telling me the only way forward was through fire. The first thread we pulled came from a name buried in a donor list, Senator Grant Waverly. I felt a chill when I saw it. Waverly had been one of my father's closest allies, a man who had stood at his side during reform campaigns, who had given speeches about integrity and transparency. He was the kind of senator the public adored, a charming moderate who spoke about bipartisanship like it was a sacred prayer. "My father trusted him," I whispered. "He called him a friend." David studied me carefully. "Friends don't mean much in this town. Waverly's name shows up on documents tied to offshore accounts. He funneled money through shell companies connected to Silent Eagle. If your father found that out, it explains everything." I shook my head, almost refusing to believe it. "No. He can't be the one. He was different. He cared." David's expression hardened. "Sophia, listen to me. The people who smile the brightest are often the ones hiding the sharpest knives." The words cut me. I remembered Waverly's speeches at my father's rallies, the way he had hugged me at the funeral, whispering that my father had been a good man, that history would remember him kindly. Had those words been guilt disguised as comfort? The more we dug into Waverly, the darker it got. He had received massive donations from defense contractors just weeks before my father began his investigation into procurement fraud. He had traveled to Singapore under mysterious circumstances the same month my father died. And in one leaked memo, we found his initials beside a line item marked containment strategy. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. It wasn't just an enemy who had taken my father. It was someone he trusted, someone I had trusted. But betrayal wasn't only coming from old allies, it was seeping into my present too. Lucas was slipping away from me. He called less often, answered texts with delays, always claiming he was in meetings or swamped with work. When we did see each other, he seemed distracted, almost nervous. One night I confronted him outside his office as he was leaving. "Lucas, talk to me," I said, catching his arm. "What's going on? You're hiding something." He glanced around the street as if worried someone was watching. "Sophia, please, you're diving too deep. You don't know the kind of forces you're messing with. I'm just trying to protect you." "Protect me from what?" I snapped. "From the truth, from the same people who murdered my father?" His jaw clenched. You don't understand how deep this goes. If you keep pulling at this, they'll destroy you too. I stared at him, anger rising. Then stand with me, help me. If you love me at all, don't let me fight this alone. He looked at me for a long moment, his eyes full of something I couldn't name, fear, maybe guilt. Then he whispered, I can't, and pulled his arm away. I watched him walk into the night, and something inside me broke. David was the only one I had left, and even he was growing impatient with me. He didn't like my hesitations, my emotional attachments. To him, the mission mattered more than anything else. One night when I doubted whether exposing Waverly was enough, he slammed his fist on the table. You think you have the luxury of choice? People like your father die because others stay silent. You either fight or you get buried. Which is it going to be, Sophia? I whispered. I'm not afraid to fight. He stared at me, his expression softening slightly. Then prove it. The next day we followed one of Waverly's aides, a young man named Ryan who looked too nervous to be carrying such heavy secrets. We watched him meet a lobbyist in a quiet bar in Georgetown, sliding a folder across the table before leaving quickly. David snapped photos from a corner booth, his camera hidden beneath his jacket. When we looked through the pictures later, my blood froze. Inside that folder, just visible, was a copy of the same memo I had been sent. Silent Eagle. Target neutralized. It meant there were more copies. It meant the conspiracy wasn't even afraid to circulate them within its own ranks. That night, as I lay awake staring at the ceiling, I realized something terrifying. The deeper I went, the more I became like my father. Obsessed, consumed, willing to risk everything for a shred of truth. And I wondered if that was exactly what they wanted, to trap me in the same web that had killed him. But it was too late to stop. I whispered into the darkness. They thought they could scare me into silence. They thought wrong. And somewhere deep inside, past the fear and the grief, I felt the spark of something stronger. Not just anger, resolve. The city felt different now. It was not just a place of monuments and ambition anymore. To me, it had become a maze of shadows and echoes. Every streetlight seemed to cast more darkness than light, every passing glance carried suspicion. Washington had always thrived on secrets, but now I was no longer an observer. I was inside the secret itself, and it was watching me back. Nights were the worst. I would sit in my apartment with the blinds closed, the television on mute just for the illusion of company, and still I felt it. The hum of someone else's presence, the weight of unseen eyes. I told myself it was paranoia, but deep down I knew it was real. My father's ghost had left me with a map, and someone else was making sure I never reached the end of it. One evening after leaving David's place, I decided to walk home instead of calling a cab. The streets were quiet, slick from a late drizzle. My heels clicked against the pavement, echoing louder than usual. That was when I heard them. Footsteps, not rushing, not casual, steady, deliberate. At first I told myself it was nothing, just another person heading in the same direction. I slowed my pace. The footsteps slowed too. I crossed the street. The sound crossed with me. My pulse quickened. I reached a corner store and slipped inside, pretending to browse the shelves. In the reflection of the freezer door, I saw him. A man in a gray coat pretending to read a magazine, his eyes lifting every few seconds to watch me. I grabbed a bottle of water I did not need, paid quickly, and left. My heart was hammering so hard it drowned out everything else. I turned down a side street, moving fast. By the time I reached my building, the man was gone. But the fear stayed. It clung to me like smoke, following me into the elevator, into my apartment, into my dreams. The next day, I slammed a pile of documents onto David's cluttered table. They are following me, I said, my voice sharp. Last night it was a man in a gray coat. He stayed on me for blocks. This is not in my head. David lit a cigarette and leaned back in his chair. The room was dim, the blinds drawn tight. Of course it is not in your head. You have their secret. You are your father's daughter. What did you think would happen, that they would simply let you dig around in peace? I glared at him. So what do we do about it? He shrugged, smoke curling around his face. We keep going. Fear means we are close. It means we are pressing the right nerve. That is easy for you to say, I shot back. They are not following you through the streets at night. He gave me a hard look. Do not fool yourself. If they wanted you dead, you would already be dead. They are not done with you yet, which means you still have time. Is it? His words did not comfort me. Fear did not feel like progress. Fear felt like drowning slowly, one breath at a time. That night Lucas called. His voice was tense, almost frantic. Sophia, listen to me. You need to stop whatever you are doing. Right now, please, it is not safe. I gripped the phone, pacing my apartment. Do not do this again, Lucas. Do not feed me half warnings. Tell me what you know. There was silence on the line. Then he whispered, I cannot protect you this time. My chest tightened. Protect me from what? Protect me from who? Are you working with them? Another silence, heavier than the first. When he finally spoke, his voice was hollow. It is complicated. Then he hung up. I stood frozen with the phone still pressed to my ear, my hands shaking. The man I loved was slipping away, not because of distance or arguments, but because he was hiding something. I could not tell if it was fear driving him or guilt. I tried to sleep, but the night gave me no peace. Images of my father's last days swirled in my mind. His warnings, his exhaustion, the way he hugged me so tightly the last time we met. I woke at dawn with the sheets tangled around me and the bitter taste of betrayal in my mouth. Later that day, I met David again. We sat surrounded by papers, the blinds closed as always. He handed me a stack of records tied to defense contracts. These shell companies all circle back to Waverly, he said. And here's the kicker. The accounts are linked to an offshore bank in the Caymans. Guess whose initials appear on the transfer forms? I took the papers and read them with trembling hands. The initials matched Waverly, my father's friend. His ally, I whispered. My father trusted him. He trusted him with everything. David's eyes were hard. Your father trusted the wrong man, and it cost him his life. The words hit me like a punch. I set the papers down and pressed my hands to my face. For years, I had carried the suspicion that my father's death was not what they told me. Now I was staring at proof that the betrayal came from someone inside his own circle. It was almost too much to bear. David leaned forward. You wanted truth. This is truth. And if you want justice, we have to take it further. I looked up at him. And what happens when they realize we are closing in? They already know, he said simply. The question is how far you are willing to go. I thought of Lucas. I thought of the gray coat man. I thought of my father's tired but defiant eyes in those last photographs. My answer was already written in the weight inside my chest. I am willing to go all the way. The first time they tried to silence me, it was not subtle. It was not whispers or shadows on the street. It was metal and speed and violence. I was driving home late after leaving David's apartment. The streets were mostly empty, the kind of eerie silence that falls over Washington after midnight. I had the radio on low, trying to distract myself from the stack of documents still burning in my thoughts. Then headlights appeared in my rearview mirror. At first I thought nothing of it, but when I changed lanes, the car behind me did too. When I slowed, they slowed. When I sped up, they closed the distance. The first jolt came when they slammed into my bumper. My hands flew to grip the wheel, my heart leaping into my throat. I swerved, tires screeching. The car rammed me again, harder this time. My breath came in short gasps. I tried to pull toward the shoulder, but they cut me off, boxing me in. God, no, I whispered, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Another impact threw me against my seatbelt. My car skidded, fishtailing across the slick pavement. For a split second, I thought it was over, that I would join my father in whatever cold silence they had forced on him. Then headlights flashed in my side mirror. Another car appeared, roaring past me, forcing the attacker to slam on their brakes. My vehicle wobbled but stayed upright. The second car swerved between us, cutting the pursuit. The attacker honked, tried to push forward again, then peeled away into the night. I pulled over, shaking, my chest tight with terror. The second car stopped in front of me. David climbed out, his face pale in the glow of the streetlights. Jesus, Sophia, he shouted as he ran to my door. Are you hurt? I was trembling too hard to answer. He opened the door and helped me out, his hand gripping mine firmly. They were trying to kill me, I said in a hoarse whisper. Of course they were, he said grimly. You're getting too close. I wanted to collapse, but I forced myself to stand tall. Then we're right, we're over the target. David's eyes searched mine, and for a moment his bitterness softened. You sound just like him, just like your father. We abandoned my car and drove back to his place in silence. My thoughts were loud, though, crashing inside my skull. If they were willing to kill me now, it meant what we had found was dangerous enough to matter. The next morning, I called Lucas. He answered after several rings, his voice tight. Sophia, why are you calling me this early? They tried to kill me last night, I said flatly. A car chased me, forced me off the road. If David hadn't shown up, he interrupted sharply. You need to stop saying things like that. Do not put this on the phone. Do not tell me details. Just stop. Stop. My voice rose. You think I can just walk away after what they did to my father? After what they tried to do to me? There was a long pause. Then he said, softly but firmly, if you keep going, I will not be able to help you. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, rage mixing with heartbreak. Lucas had chosen his side. Whether out of fear, ambition, or guilt, he was not with me anymore. And maybe he never really had been. That night, David spread new documents across the table. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, memos with initials we recognized. Waverly's name appeared again and again, tied to slush funds and shadow operations. "This is enough to burn him," David said. "If we get this to the right people, he is finished." "Finished?" I asked bitterly. "My father is in the ground. Finished does not feel like justice." David looked at me, his eyes tired but fierce. "Justice is never clean, Sophia. It is never complete. It is just a crack in the wall. You push until the whole thing falls." I pressed my palms against the table, leaning close to him. "Then let us push harder." For the first time since this began, he smiled. Not a warm smile, but a grim, determined one. "Now you sound ready." But even as I said the words, I knew the cost was rising, and I wondered how much of myself would be left once the wall finally fell. The morning after the attempt on my life, I stood at the sink staring at my reflection. The bathroom mirror was cracked in the corner, catching the light from the window and splitting my face into fragments. For a long time, I did not move. I simply watched myself breathe. My hair was tangled, my eyes hollow, and bruises were beginning to bloom across my arms from the seatbelt that had kept me alive. I should have felt broken. I should have felt ready to give up. But what I saw looking back at me was something sharper, harder. For years after my father's death, I carried grief like a stone in my chest. Last night that grief had changed. It had become anger. Not the quiet simmer I had lived with, but fire. They wanted me afraid. They wanted me weak. Instead, they had reminded me of why I could never walk away. I left the mirror and paced my small apartment, trying to steady my thoughts. Every sound outside made me tense. A car door slamming, footsteps in the hallway, the creak of pipes in the walls. I told myself I was safe for now, but I no longer believed in safety. Not in this city. By late afternoon, I forced myself out the door and back to David's place. The laundromat downstairs was busy, machines humming, people chatting while folding clothes. It almost felt normal, almost safe. But when I climbed the stairs and stepped into David's apartment, the illusion of safety vanished. His windows were covered with newspaper to block the view. Ashtrays overflowed on the table. Documents were everywhere, spread across the floor like a paper storm. He looked up from a pile of records, cigarette dangling from his mouth. "You look like hell," he said. "I almost died last night," I replied coldly. He stubbed the cigarette out and leaned back. "That means we are close." I sat down opposite him, pushing papers aside. "Close to what?" "Close to ending up like my father?" His eyes narrowed. "Close to proving your father was murdered. Close to blowing this wide open." I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. What if no one listens? What if they bury us the way they buried him? David leaned forward, his voice hard. "Then at least we go down fighting. Do you think your father wanted you to curl up and stay quiet? He died because he refused to bend. Are you going to waste that sacrifice?" I clenched my fists. "I do not want to waste it. I just do not know how to win against people who own everything." He pulled a folder from the stack and slid it toward me. "We do not need everything. We just need one thing they cannot deny. Waverly is that thing, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. His fingerprints are all over Silent Eagle. If we leak this, his career is over." I opened the folder and scanned the documents again. Transfers, signatures, coded memos, the evidence was damning, but the thought of releasing it terrified me. "If we leak this, they will come after us harder. You know that." "They already tried," he said flatly, "and you are still here." I sank back in my chair, pressing my palms against my eyes. "I do not want to be a martyr, David. I want justice." He studied me quietly for a moment. Then he said, softer than before, "Justice and martyrdom are closer than you think." The silence stretched between us until I finally whispered, "How do we do it?" He leaned forward, the fire in his eyes burning through his exhaustion. "We find a channel they cannot control. Someone with reach, someone who will not fold under pressure. We do not hand this to the mainstream networks. They are compromised. We go underground, independent media, leak sites, somewhere the public can see it before they have time to spin it." I swallowed hard. "And if they trace it back to us?" "They will," he said, "but by then it will be too late. Once the truth is out, it cannot be buried again." I wanted to believe him, but a knot of fear tightened in my stomach. I thought of my father's face in his final days. The exhaustion, the weight he carried. I was beginning to understand it now. That night, I could not bring myself to go back to my apartment. I stayed on David's couch, lying awake while he worked at the table. Papers rustled. Cigarettes burned down to ash. The glow of his desk lamp cast him in half shadow, making him look both determined and haunted. At one point, he noticed I was still awake. He poured a glass of water and set it on the coffee table near me. "You should rest, Sophia," he said quietly. "I keep seeing the headlights in the mirror," I whispered. The moment before the crash, I thought I was about to join him. David sat down across from me, his voice steady. That fear never goes away, but you learn to live with it, and one day you realize fear can keep you sharp. I looked at him in the dim light. What did they take from you, David? What made you this way? He gave a hollow laugh. My career, my reputation, friends who vanished when I became inconvenient. I was not strong enough to fight back then, but maybe this is my second chance. We sat in silence, two broken people bound together by the same shadow. For the first time, I felt less alone. When sleep finally came, it was restless and shallow. I dreamed of my father standing in the Capitol rotunda, surrounded by faceless men in suits. He was shouting, but no sound came out. I tried to reach him, but every step forward dragged me deeper into the marble floor until I could not move. I woke gasping, my heart racing, the taste of desperation bitter in my mouth. The next morning, David handed me a burner phone. From now on, you do not use your regular line, he said. They are listening. I turned the cheap plastic phone over in my hands. This makes it feel real. He gave me a sharp look. It has been real since the night your father died. You are just starting to see it. I pocketed the phone and nodded. Then let us make it count. We started outlining a plan, contact names scribbled on paper, potential leak channels, secure drop sites. Every step carried risk, but so did staying silent. As we worked, I realized something that shook me. The moment we released this, my life would no longer be mine. There would be no going back to Sophia, who believed in slow reform and noble speeches. There would only be Sophia hunted by the machine that killed her father. And yet, for the first time since his death, I felt close to him. Closer than I had in years. Maybe because I was finally walking the path he had died on. Maybe because his fight had never truly ended. It had only passed on to me. I whispered to myself, too softly for David to hear, I will finish what you started, Dad, I swear it. The silence in my apartment was never really silent anymore. It carried weight. It carried eyes. At night, I would lie in bed and hear the refrigerator hum or the pipes knock, and each sound felt like a signal. I would wake from shallow dreams with my heart racing, convinced someone had been standing over me. Sometimes I swore I heard footsteps outside my door, fading away just as I held my breath. Sleep no longer gave me rest. It only gave me time to imagine all the ways they might come for me. For 2 days, Lucas did not call. 2 days of watching shadows move across my window blinds. 2 days of waiting for my burner phone to buzz with a message from David instead of a threat. 2 days of wondering if I had already lost the man I thought I could still trust. When my regular phone finally lit up with his name, relief hit me so fast I almost dropped it. Lucas, I said, breathless. His voice came low and urgent. Sophia, we cannot keep talking like this. Not on this line. Not like this at all. I pressed the phone to my ear as if closeness could make his words steadier. Then tell me where to meet you, face to face, no more riddles. There was a pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost feel him wrestling with himself. Finally he said, Foggy Bottom, the cafe on 19th. Late, there will not be a crowd. I should have hesitated. Every instinct told me it was dangerous, but I was too desperate for answers. For him. I left my apartment that night wrapped in a coat that felt too thin for the sharp November air, clutching the burner phone like a lifeline in my pocket. The cafe was dim and nearly empty when I arrived. The overhead lights buzzed softly, and the smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air. He was already there in the corner, hunched over a cup gone cold. When he lifted his eyes to me, they were ringed with exhaustion. He looked older, smaller somehow, like the city had been draining him too. I slid into the booth. You look like hell, I said. His lips twitched in something that might have been a smile. So do you? He pushed the cup aside and leaned closer. Sophia, you have to let this go, please. You have no idea how deep this runs. I gritted my teeth. Then explain it to me. Stop speaking in circles and tell me the truth. His gaze darted toward the window as if the shadows outside were listening. I cannot. If I do, it is both of us they bury. Do you understand that, both of us? My chest tightened with anger and grief all at once. They already tried to bury me, Lucas. They chased me off the road last week. Did you know about that? He froze. It was subtle, but I caught it. His jaw clenched, his eyes flickered down and then back up to mine. You knew, I whispered. He shook his head quickly, his voice breaking. I tried to warn you. I told you to stop. I never wanted you in the crosshairs. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. If you loved me, you would stand with me. Not hide behind fear. So which is it? Do you stand with me or with them? He opened his mouth, closed it again. His eyes lowered and he said nothing. That silence was my answer. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping the floor. Goodbye, Lucas, I said, though my voice shook. I walked out into the night air that cut like glass, leaving him behind in that dim little cafe with his silence. By the time I reached David's apartment, the tears had dried, replaced by a cold, hollow ache. I dropped into the chair across from him and told him everything. David did not even blink. He lit a cigarette, exhaled smoke, and said, "He was compromised from the start. You just refused to see it." I snapped at him, my voice raw. "Do not say it like that. He is not the enemy." David's stare was sharp, unyielding. "Anyone who does not stand with you in this fight is the enemy. That is the reality of the world you are in now." I turned away, but his words dug into me. The pressure was closing in on every side. That same week, my apartment was broken into again. This time there was no mess, no drawers pulled open or files scattered, just quiet proof that they had been there. The curtain was drawn half an inch from where I had left it. The faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered though I had not lit one. And on my kitchen counter, placed neatly in the center as though it had been a gift, was a photograph of my father. I stared at it until my hands shook. They wanted me to know they could walk through my home as easily as opening a door. They wanted me to feel hunted even in my own bed. I carried the photo to David's place and slammed it down on the table. "They were inside," I said, my voice trembling with rage. "They left this." He studied it calmly, like he had expected it. "Then they are reminding you who you are up against. They are telling you to stop. They are telling me they can reach me whenever they want," I hissed. David leaned forward, his voice steady. "Then you know it is time to move faster. The longer we wait, the closer they will get. We will leak the evidence soon, before they cut off our chance." I dropped into a chair, burying my face in my hands. "I am losing everything. Lucas, my home, my peace. All I have left is you and this pile of paper." He reached across the table and tapped the stack of documents with his finger. "Then hold on to it, because this is all that matters now. This is not about peace, Sophia. Peace is gone. This is about war." His words struck me hard. War, that was what this had become. That night I lay on his couch, staring at the stained ceiling, too wired to sleep. My mind kept circling the same thoughts. Lucas's silence, the photo on my counter, my father's tired eyes in those last weeks. If this was war, then I was already enlisted. And I whispered into the darkness, "I will not surrender. Not now. Not ever." The next morning the city felt sharper, like every edge had been honed overnight. The sound of traffic seemed louder, the faces in the crowd harder to read. I kept my coat pulled tight around me as I walked toward David's apartment, my eyes flicking to every car that slowed, every figure that lingered too long at a corner. It was not just paranoia anymore. They had been in my home. They had left my father's photograph where I would find it. They wanted me to feel them breathing down my neck. By the time I reached David's door, my nerves were frayed. I knocked 3 times, our agreed signal, and waited. He opened cautiously, peering out before letting me in. The blinds were closed as always, the air heavy with smoke and the clutter of endless papers. "You look like you have not slept," he said. "I have not," I answered. "I see them everywhere." "Good," he muttered, dropping into his chair. "It means you are awake." I sat across from him, my hands folded tight in my lap. "We cannot keep sitting on this. They are moving faster." "They will not stop until I am gone." David pulled a folder from the pile and opened it. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, signatures. Waverly's name stamped again and again like a scar across the pages. "This is enough to blow a hole in him," David said. "The trick is choosing how." "What do you mean?" "If we send this to the wrong outlet, it gets buried. If we go to the wrong person, it vanishes. We need a channel they cannot shut down." I leaned forward. "Then who do we trust?" He took a long drag on his cigarette, eyes narrowing through the smoke. "There are independent journalists, a few sites that live and die by leaks, but they are watched too. Once we send this out, there is no going back. They will come harder." I pressed my palms against the table. "They already tried to kill me. They already broke into my home. There is nothing harder left to come." He looked at me for a long time, then shook his head slowly. "There is always harder, Sophia. You have not seen the bottom yet." His words settled in my chest like a weight, but still I nodded. "Then we do it anyway." For the next hours, we worked in silence. Sorting, scanning, compiling. My hands shook each time I fed another sheet into the scanner, each beep echoing like a gunshot in the small room. David typed with sharp, practiced movements, setting up encrypted channels, layering protection over protection. I watched him and realized this was not his first time. He had done this before, long ago, when he still had a name in the city. At one point I asked, "What happened the last time you tried?" He did not look up. "They crushed me. They took everything I had." "Then why help me now?" Finally, he lifted his eyes to mine. "Because this time I want them to bleed too." The room fell silent again except for the hum of the old computer. By evening, my nerves were stretched thin. I stood at the window, peeking through the slats of the blinds. On the street below, a black sedan sat parked, engine idling. Two men inside, dark suits, sunglasses even as the sun set. They did not look away when I stared down at them. "They are outside," I whispered. David came to look, his jaw tightening. "They want you to see them. It is intimidation." "It is working," I admitted, my voice trembling. He turned to me sharply. "Do not let them win in your head. Fear is their first weapon. You fight it by refusing to give them the satisfaction." But fear was already in me, crawling under my skin. My father had fought until it killed him. Would that be my end too? That night I did not dare go back to my apartment. I stayed on David's couch again, curled beneath a thin blanket while the glow of his desk lamp burned late. My eyes refused to close. Every creak in the old building felt like a footstep in the hall. Every car that passed outside made me brace for another attack. Sometime after midnight, David finally spoke without looking up from his work. "You are still awake." I stared at the ceiling. I cannot stop seeing that photograph on my counter. It felt like he was in the room with me, but I know it was them mocking me. I hate them for it. David's voice was quiet but firm. "Good, hate will keep you moving. Hate will keep you alive." I rolled onto my side, watching him. "And what about you? What keeps you alive?" He gave a bitter half smile. "Spite. They took my career, my reputation, everything I built. I live now just to see them fall." His answer frightened me almost as much as it comforted me, because I realized that if I stayed on this path long enough, I might become the same, living on spite, breathing only for revenge. When dawn crept in, I finally drifted into a shallow sleep. I dreamed of my father again. This time he was sitting at his old desk, surrounded by files and papers. He looked up at me with tired eyes. "Do not let them write the ending," he said. "Do not let them win." I reached for him, but he faded before I could touch him. I woke with tears on my cheeks and the certainty that I could not turn back now. By the end of that day, we had a rough plan. David had contacted an old ally, a journalist named Claire who had once been respected but had since been blacklisted for publishing too many inconvenient truths. She lived in exile from the mainstream press, running a small but fierce independent outlet. If anyone had the courage to publish what we had, it was her. "We will meet her tomorrow night," David said. "Neutral ground. If she takes this, the story goes live within days." I nodded, my heart pounding. It was happening. Finally, it was happening. But as I looked out the window again and saw the black sedan still idling, I wondered if I would live to see the day the story broke. The following evening, the air felt heavier than usual, as if the whole city was holding its breath. I could not shake the sense that every step I took was being measured by unseen eyes. David and I moved separately, meeting at the edge of a dimly lit park near Adams Morgan. He said it was safer this way, less chance of drawing notice. I was not sure I believed him. The truth was, there was no safe anymore. When I saw him waiting beneath a street lamp, I almost turned back. His figure in the half-light looked like a ghost, shoulders hunched, cigarette burning low between his fingers. But then he lifted his head and waved me over, and I forced myself forward. "She will be here soon," David said as I joined him. I tugged my coat tighter. "How do you even know we can trust her?" "Because she already lost everything for telling the truth," he said. "That makes her dangerous in all the right ways." We did not wait long. A woman appeared at the far end of the path, walking quickly, her face half hidden beneath a hood. When she reached us, she lowered it and I saw sharp eyes, lined with exhaustion but alive with fire. This was Claire. "You were right to keep it quiet," she said to David, her voice low and urgent. "They are already sniffing around. 2 of my contacts disappeared last week. Silent Eagle is cleaning house." Hearing the names spoken aloud made my stomach twist. I folded my arms, studying her. "And you are still willing to meet us?" She gave a small, humorless smile. "If I walked away from every threat, I would have been gone years ago. Show me what you have." David handed her a flash drive. She slipped it into her pocket without looking at it. "I will check it later. Out here, nothing digital is safe, too easy to intercept." I frowned. "Then why meet us at all?" "Because I needed to see you," she said, her eyes on me. "To know you are real, to know you are willing to bleed for this." Her words sent a chill through me. I already bled. They tried to kill me on the road last week. They broke into my home. They left a picture of my father on my counter like a trophy. Claire's expression softened slightly. "Then you know what you are up against. That is the only test that matters." The 3 of us stood in silence for a moment, the city buzzing faintly in the distance. Finally, Claire said, "If this is as solid as David claims, it will not just take down Waverly. It will rattle the whole machine, but you need to understand something. Once this goes live, you will not have a life left to return to. You will be hunted until the day you die." Her words struck deep. I swallowed hard and said, Then let them hunt. I would rather die standing with the truth than live crawling under their lies. For the first time, she truly smiled, though it was sharp and weary. Then maybe we have a chance. We arranged a second meeting for the handoff of the physical documents. Claire insisted it had to be somewhere with people, a place where disappearing us would be harder. She suggested a crowded market in broad daylight. David agreed reluctantly. As she walked away into the shadows, I felt both lighter and heavier. Lighter because we finally had an ally. Heavier because now the risk was multiplied. If Silent Eagle learned about her, she would be the next target. Later that night, back in David's apartment, I could not sit still. I paced the floor while he watched me silently from his chair. "You trust her too easily," I said. "What if she is playing us?" "She is not," David answered calmly. "They destroyed her years ago. She has nothing left to lose. That makes her the only kind of ally worth having." I shook my head. "But what if they find her before we can finish this? What if they take her like they took my father?" David's voice was quiet but steady. "Then we move faster. The window is closing, Sophia." Every day we hesitate is another day they tighten the net. As if to prove his point, a sound outside made both of us freeze, a car door slamming, footsteps on the stairs. David killed the lamp instantly, plunging us into darkness. We held our breath, listening. The footsteps stopped at the landing outside his door. Silence. Then a faint scrape like metal against the lock. My pulse thundered in my ears. David moved silently to the table, grabbing a heavy flashlight. He motioned for me to stay low. Then the footsteps moved on, fading back down the stairs. A door slammed somewhere below. We stayed frozen for a long moment before David finally spoke. "They are probing, testing how close they can get." My hands were shaking. "How long before they stop testing and come straight through the door?" David met my eyes. "Soon. That is why we cannot wait any longer." I lay awake again on his couch, staring at the ceiling while dawn crept in. The world felt like it was narrowing around me, shrinking to this apartment, this fight, this one chance to finish what my father started. For the first time since his death, I felt like I was standing in his shoes. And for the first time, I understood how heavy they were. The market was alive with noise, color, and movement, but for me it felt like a stage where every actor was wearing a mask. Stalls overflowed with fruit and spices, the air thick with the smell of roasted meat and strong coffee. Families wove between vendors, children tugging at their parents' sleeves, laughter floating through the air. On the surface it looked safe, ordinary, but I knew better. Crowds did not mean safety. Crowds meant cover, and Silent Eagle loved cover. David walked beside me, his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his worn jacket. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning every corner, every face. He looked like a man who had lived too long with paranoia and had learned to make it his closest companion. "You see her yet?" I whispered. He shook his head. "She will come. She knows how to be invisible until the right moment." We stopped near a stand selling coffee and pastries, pretending to browse. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Every time someone brushed past me, I flinched. I kept telling myself we were safe here. Broad daylight. Too many people. But then I remembered my father. He had died surrounded by friends and allies. Safety was always an illusion. Claire appeared suddenly, as if she had materialized from the crowd. One moment she was not there, the next she was at my side, slipping between vendors with the ease of someone who had been hiding in plain sight for years. She wore a simple jacket, her hair tied back, nothing to draw attention. But her eyes burned with that same sharp intensity I had seen the first night. "You brought them?" she asked softly. David gave a quick nod. He handed her a small folder, bound with string. Not everything, just enough to prove the larger case. Copies, evidence that pointed to Waverly, to Silent Eagle, to the rot festering in the halls of power. Claire slid the folder into her bag with practiced ease. "Good, this is enough to start. Once I publish, the others will know where to look. It will spread before they can stop it." "Then we are finished," I whispered, but my voice carried more hope than certainty. Claire shook her head. "No, this is just the beginning. Once this is live, they will come harder. You have to be ready." Before I could answer, David tensed. His eyes locked on something over my shoulder. "Do not turn around," he muttered. My blood ran cold. "What is it?" "Two men," he said. "Dark suits, watching us from near the fruit stand. They are not shopping." Claire's hand tightened on her bag. "We need to move, now." We slipped back into the flow of the crowd, trying to look ordinary. My heart raced with every step. I risked a glance and saw them. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the calm precision of men trained to follow without losing their target. Their eyes never left us. "Split up," Claire whispered. "We meet again tonight, same place." "No," I hissed. "If we split, they will pick us off one by one." She shot me a look. If we stay together, we make it easier for them, trust me. Before I could argue, she melted into the crowd, swallowed up by the flow of people. David grabbed my arm. Come on. We turned sharply down a narrow row of stalls, weaving past shoppers. The air smelled of spices and fried food, but all I could taste was fear. Behind us, I heard footsteps quickening. They are following, I whispered. I know, David said. Keep moving. We reached the edge of the market and ducked into an alley. My chest heaved as I tried to catch my breath. David leaned against the wall, his eyes still sharp. They will not hit us here, he said. Too many witnesses. Then why follow us? To remind us they can, to remind us we are never safe. We stayed there for a long moment, the noise of the market muffled behind us. My hands shook as I pressed them to my face. They will kill her, I said. They will kill Claire. Not if we move fast, David replied. She knows the game. She has survived this long. I lowered my hands and looked at him. How many more have to die before the truth is worth it? He met my eyes, his voice hard. Your father asked himself that same question. And he answered it with his life. Now it is your turn. I hated him for being right. When we finally left the alley and merged back into the city streets, I could still feel the men's eyes on me even though they were gone. They had let us walk away, but I knew it was not mercy. It was a message. That night, lying awake again on David's couch, I thought of Claire. Somewhere in the city, she was staring at the same folder we had handed her, deciding how to turn it into fire. I prayed she would survive long enough to light the match. For the first time since my father's death, I felt we were close to something real. Not justice yet, not safety, but the possibility of shaking the machine that had destroyed him. And for the first time, I wondered if I had the strength to survive the storm we had just unleashed. The next 24 hours felt like living inside a thunderstorm that had not yet broken. The air was thick, heavy, ready to shatter with the first strike. David and I stayed inside his apartment with the blinds drawn, the only light coming from the glow of his old computer and the lamp on the table. We barely spoke. Every few minutes I checked the burner phone, scrolling through empty screens as if staring long enough could force a message to appear. Claire was supposed to signal by noon. Noon passed, then 2, then 3. My chest grew tighter with each hour. By the time dusk settled outside, the silence had become unbearable. She should have checked in, I muttered, pacing the room. David sat at the table, cigarette smoldering between his fingers. He did not look up. Late does not mean lost. She knows how to disappear. She has been doing it for years. I spun toward him, anger rising with my fear. So did my father. He tried to disappear in his work and the things he fought for, and look how that ended. Finally, David lifted his eyes. There was no softness in them, only the edge of a man who had already lost too much. Fear will not bring her back faster, Sophia. Sit down. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to run into the streets and search for her myself. Instead, I collapsed onto the couch, clutching the burner phone as if it were a lifeline. My hands shook. I hated how powerless I felt. Then, just as the last light faded from the window, the phone buzzed. I almost dropped it, my pulse hammering. A single coded message blinked on the screen. It begins. I exhaled, my breath shuddering. She did it. She actually did it. David leaned back, finally allowing himself a thin smile. Then the storm has started. We pulled up the encrypted browser on his computer. The headline was already spreading on one of the underground sites Claire was connected to. Leaked documents tie Senator Waverly to covert program known as Silent Eagle. The article was short but sharp, laying out the evidence in simple terms. Memos with coded language, transfers to offshore accounts. The initials GW beside lines authorizing containment strategy. Enough for the public to understand something ugly was hiding in plain sight. Enough to wound him. My eyes raced over the words, heart pounding with every sentence. Seeing it there in black and white made it real in a way our secret papers never had. People will see this, I whispered. They cannot ignore it. David's expression was grim. Do not underestimate them. Waverly will deny it. His allies will smear the source, call it fake, call it foreign interference. The machine will do everything it can to bury this. But it is out there, I said fiercely. They cannot bury all of it, not anymore. The phone buzzed again. Another coded message from Claire, eyes on me, moving safe house. I clenched the phone, dread twisting in my gut. They are onto her already. Of course they are, David said. She poked the beast. Now it will try to bite. We stayed up all night watching the ripples spread. Other small outlets picked up the story. Bloggers, independent reporters, activists. By dawn, it had begun to trend on social media. Waverly's name was suddenly everywhere, tangled with words like corruption and conspiracy. But with daylight came the counterattack. By mid-morning, mainstream networks dismissed the leak as unreliable, citing anonymous officials who claimed it was fabricated. Waverly himself appeared on television, smiling tightly as he called the accusations an outrageous smear campaign designed to undermine democracy. He spoke about enemies of the state, about disinformation, about standing strong against lies. His performance was smooth, practiced. Watching him made me sick. "They are protecting him," I said bitterly. "Just like they protected the others," David snorted. "Of course they are, but the seed is planted. Once a crack appears, you cannot unsee it. Some people will start asking questions. That is how it spreads." I pressed my hands against my face. "And in the meantime, what about Claire? What if she does not make it to her safe house?" As if in answer, a sharp knock rattled the door. We froze. David gestured for me to stay back. He moved silently to the door, peered through the peephole. His face hardened. He mouthed one word, "Agents," my breath caught. The knock came again, louder this time. A man's voice called out, smooth and professional. "Mr. Hayes, Ms. Carter, we know you are inside. We need to ask you a few questions." David stepped away from the door, his eyes cold. "Pack the files, now." I scrambled, shoving papers into a bag, my hands fumbling with panic. The voice outside spoke again. "If you do not open the door, we will come in." The lock rattled. My chest seized with terror. David grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the back. "Fire escape, go." We climbed out into the freezing night, the metal stairs creaking beneath our feet. Behind us, the front door splintered. Heavy footsteps stormed inside. I heard shouts, the crash of furniture. "Move," David hissed. We scrambled down into the alley, slipping on the icy steps. My bag banged against my side, full of papers that could cost us our lives. We hit the ground running, weaving through back streets, hearts pounding in unison. By the time we stopped, blocks away, lungs burning, I realized how close it had been. If we had hesitated another moment, they would have had us. I leaned against a wall, gasping for breath. They are not just watching anymore, they are hunting us. David lit another cigarette with shaking hands. "Good, that means we hurt them." I looked at him in disbelief. "Good, they almost had us." He exhaled smoke, his face hard. "That means we are finally hitting the truth where it hurts." I wanted to scream, but deep down I knew he was right. We had crossed a line and there was no going back. The truth was finally out there. And now the fight for survival had truly begun. We did not go back to David's apartment. We could not. By the time we turned down the next block, sirens were already echoing through the night. The sound was too sharp, too deliberate, as if the city itself had joined the hunt. I knew in my gut that if we had stayed even a few minutes longer, our bodies would have been found in that apartment, and the story of our deaths would have been rewritten into something neat and bloodless for the evening news. David walked fast, his shoulders hunched, his eyes flicking to every shadow. He knew the alleys better than I did. He cut through narrow side streets, slipped past shuttered storefronts, led us across a construction site, and never once slowed until we were beneath the heavy iron of a railway bridge. The roar of a train overhead drowned out my ragged breathing. I leaned against the cold stone, clutching the bag of documents to my chest so hard it hurt. "They know everything now," I whispered, my voice hoarse. "Our names, our faces, where we've been." David struck a match with shaking hands, lit a cigarette, and exhaled. The smoke curled around him like armor. "Of course they know. You think they didn't already? This was just confirmation. What matters is they acted. That means we hit them where it hurts." I laughed bitterly. "Hurts? They almost had us. My father, I am starting to think I am walking straight into his grave." David's eyes narrowed through the smoke. "Then walk faster. If you stop, you will end up beside him." I turned away, pressing my back to the wall, staring at the darkness between the buildings. My father's face flickered in my mind, the last hug he gave me. The way his hand lingered at the back of my head as if he wanted to memorize the feel of me. Had he known it was goodbye? David flicked his cigarette away. "Washington is finished for us. If we stay, we will not last the week. We need to leave, tonight." I turned back to him, my heart twisting. Leave the city. This is my home. This is where my father fought. If we run, aren't we handing it to them?" His face hardened. "If you are dead, Sophia, then you hand them everything. Survival is not surrender. Survival means you get to keep fighting. Trust me, I learned that the hard way." The words struck something deep in me. I hated them because they were true. We moved through the city like ghosts, keeping to back streets and avoiding cameras. Just before dawn, we reached the Greyhound station. The air smelled of diesel and cold coffee. People slumped in plastic chairs, travelers half asleep with their bags clutched close. We blended in as best we could. David bought 2 tickets with cash, careful not to use his real name. The clerk barely looked up. We boarded a bus heading south. The vinyl seats were cracked, the heater rattled, and the hum of the engine filled the silence between us. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching the city slip away. The Capitol dome glowed faintly in the distance, shrinking with each mile. I had once thought it was a beacon of hope. Now it looked like a tombstone. Hours passed in silence. David dozed with his arms crossed, his head tilted back, cigarette-stained fingers twitching even in sleep. I stayed awake, unable to close my eyes. Every flash of headlights outside made me tense, bracing for the sound of metal on metal, the impact of another car trying to erase me from the world. Near noon, the bus stopped at a roadside diner. We stepped inside with the other passengers, the warm, greasy air wrapping around us. A waitress with tired eyes poured us coffee without asking, the kind of gesture that said she had seen too many faces passing through to remember any of them. David ordered eggs and toast. I just pushed food around my plate, my stomach twisted too tight to eat. My eyes kept darting to the door. Each time it opened, I imagined the men in suits from the market stepping through, calm and precise, ready to drag us away. "You need to eat," David said. "I cannot," I whispered. Every bite feels like it could be my last. He leaned across the table, lowering his voice. "Listen to me. They will not stop, you know that now, but you are still here. That is what matters. Every day you wake up and breathe, you are one more day closer to burning them down." I met his eyes, searching for something steady in them. "Do you think we can really win?" His expression softened just slightly. "I think the truth has teeth, and once you let it bite, it never lets go." Before I could answer, a television mounted in the corner caught my attention. The volume was low, but the words scrolling across the screen froze me in place. "Senator Waverly denies explosive allegations, calls leak foreign hoax." I stared, my hands gripping the edge of the table. The screen showed Waverly standing at a podium, polished and calm, his tie perfectly knotted. He smiled tightly as he spoke, his voice steady. "These accusations are not only false, they are dangerous. They are an attempt to undermine our democracy, to erode trust in our institutions. I will not let the enemies of this country succeed." The waitress turned the volume up a little, and the whole diner seemed to listen. Some shook their heads, muttering about politics. Others looked uneasy, whispering. My stomach churned. "He is twisting it. He is turning the truth into a weapon." David sipped his coffee, unimpressed. "Of course he is. That is what they do, but the seed is planted. Not everyone will believe him. Some will keep asking questions." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I froze, then pulled it out. A coded message from Claire. "Safe house breached. On the move." My blood went cold. "They found her." David's jaw tightened. "Then we move faster. She will buy us as much time as she can." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. I could almost see her running through the city, carrying the folder, hunted the way I was hunted. I wanted to believe she would make it. But I had already buried too many hopes to trust in miracles. David dropped money on the table and stood. "Finish your coffee, then we disappear again." As I followed him out into the bright afternoon, the sunlight felt wrong, too sharp. The world kept moving as if nothing had happened. Families filled their cars, truckers checked their tires, the waitress lit a cigarette on her break. Ordinary lives continued, blind to the war unfolding in their shadows. I pulled the coat tighter around me and whispered to myself, "Do not let them write the ending, Dad. Do not let them win." And as the bus pulled away from the diner, carrying us further from the city I once called home, I realized I was no longer just chasing justice for my father. I was chasing survival for all of us who dared to believe the truth still mattered. The bus rolled through the night, carrying us farther and farther from the place that had once been my home and now felt like the mouth of a cage. The city lights gave way to long stretches of highway, forests looming like black walls on either side, the occasional gas station glowing faintly in the distance like a lonely star. I pressed my forehead against the glass, watching it all slide past, and wondered how long I could keep moving before the shadows swallowed me whole. I used to think Washington was the only place that mattered, that every real battle for justice was fought in committee rooms, courtrooms, polished offices with their flags and microphones. But here I was, rumbling past empty fields and rusted billboards, and the fight had followed me. It clung to me like a second skin. It was in every breath, every shiver of fear that crawled up my spine. Beside me, David sat with his arms crossed, eyes closed. Anyone else would have thought he was asleep, but I knew better. His fingers drummed lightly on his arm in a restless rhythm. Even when he was still, he was calculating, planning. A man like him never really slept. I reached into my pocket and felt the burner phone vibrate once. My stomach tightened. I pulled it out with trembling hands. A new coded message from Claire blinked on the screen. lost them for now, moving again. I closed my eyes for a moment, exhaling shakily. Relief, but only thin relief, because if she was still moving, it meant she was still being hunted. I nudged David and showed him the message. He opened his eyes, scanned the screen, then gave a single nod. She is alive, that is enough. Enough, I whispered fiercely. She is alone in that city, running for her life. If they catch her, it will not be enough. He leaned closer, his voice low. She knows the game. She has played it longer than you and me combined. If anyone can stay ahead of them, it is Claire. Do not let your fear bury you before they do. I bit my lip and stared at the floor. He made it sound so simple, but the truth was eating at me. I could not stop imagining her darting through alleys with those men in black suits just a few steps behind. I knew that fear too well. It was the same pulse hammering in my throat every time I stepped into the open. Hours passed. The bus made stops in small towns that looked forgotten by time. Each time someone boarded, my chest tightened. Every new passenger felt like a threat, every sideways glance like recognition. When an older man sat across the aisle and gave me a long look, I pulled my coat tighter and turned to the window. By noon the next day, we stopped at a roadside diner. The air was heavy with grease and coffee, the kind of place where time stood still. We slid into a booth in the corner, trying to look like just another pair of weary travelers. The television above the counter was tuned to the news. Waverly's face filled the screen, polished and calm, his voice steady as steel. These false accusations, he said, are a direct attack on our democracy. They are lies designed to divide us, to weaken us. I will not be intimidated. I will not stop serving the American people. Some of the diners muttered in agreement, nodding along. Others shook their heads, whispering among themselves. The room felt split, just like the country itself. I clenched my fists beneath the table. He is turning the truth into an attack on the truth itself. People believe him, they want to believe him. David stirred his coffee without drinking it. That is the oldest trick in the book. Deny, deflect, and speak with enough confidence that people mistake it for honesty. But do not forget, Sophia, doubt is a seed. Enough people will start asking questions. That is how cracks spread. I wanted to believe him, but my throat was tight. And what if they silence Claire before the cracks spread? He leaned closer, his eyes sharp. Then it is up to us to make sure they cannot. Before I could answer, the burner phone buzzed again. Another message from Claire, shorter this time. Safe house breached, on the move again, close call. My heart lurched. I showed David, and for the first time I saw something flicker in his eyes, concern. She will not last forever like this, I whispered. No one does, he said quietly. That is why we cannot waste time. We ate in silence, though I barely touched my food. I kept glancing at the door, half expecting the men from Washington to walk in, calm and precise, ready to erase us. After paying, we boarded another bus heading deeper south. I could not rest. The vibrations of the road rattled through me, but every time I closed my eyes I saw Claire's messages. Lost them for now. Safe house breached. How many more messages before one never came? That night, in a cheap motel with faded curtains and a broken lock on the door, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. David was at the table with a lamp, spreading out our papers again, circling names, drawing connections. His shadow stretched across the wall like something larger than life, like a man who had already been consumed by this fight and had nothing left but the scraps of his spite. Do you ever think about leaving it all? I asked softly. He looked up from his notes. Leaving what? All of it, the truth, the fight, just walking away. He leaned back, the lamp's glow catching the lines of his face. Every day. And every day I remember they already took everything from me. Walking away means they win twice, once when they ruined me, and again when they made me quit. I stared at him, realizing how close I was to that same edge. If they broke me, I would never forgive myself. If I stopped, my father's death would vanish into silence, just another line in a forgotten file. I whispered into the dark, more to myself than to David. Then I cannot stop either. The next morning, another message came from Claire. This one was different. They are using you. Bait. Stay out of sight. Trust no one. My hands trembled as I read it. I showed David and his jaw tightened. She is right, he said. They will use you to draw her out. They know she cares about you. They know you are connected. For the first time, the thought truly sank in. I was not just hunted, I was bait. The message from Claire would not leave my mind. They are using you, bait. Stay out of sight. Trust no one. I read it again and again until the words blurred, until my chest hurt from holding my breath. I felt sick with the realization that she was right. My face, my name, my father's legacy, they were not just chasing me to silence me. They were dangling me like meat on a hook, waiting for her to come closer. I sat on the edge of the motel bed, my hands pressed against my temples. David, I whispered, What if we are already lost? What if they are not chasing us anymore, but leading us? Herding us where they want? David looked up from the table where he had been scribbling notes across a torn map. His eyes were hollow from exhaustion, but sharp as knives. That is always the risk, but you do not get to stop because of it. You fight anyway. I wanted to scream at him, to tell him I was tired of fighting, tired of running, but my father's voice was louder than my fear, echoing in my memory. Do not let them write the ending, Sophie. The next morning, we were on the move again. We ditched the bus, bought an old car from a man who asked no questions for the cash David handed him. The seat smelled of gasoline and dust. The engine groaned when it started, but it carried us farther south along back roads that wound through forgotten towns. Everywhere we went, the television screens carried Waverly's face. At gas stations, diners, motel lobbies, he spoke with calm defiance, condemning the leaks as fabrications. We will not be intimidated by falsehoods, he said, voice smooth and commanding. This is an attack not just on me but on every honest American who believes in the system that keeps us safe. I wanted to throw something at the screen every time I saw him. How can people believe this? The evidence is right there. We have it. David kept his eyes on the road. Because people want to believe what feels safe. Lies are easier than truths that demand action. The words hit hard. I thought of my father, how often he had stood in front of microphones, trying to tell people the truth they did not want to hear. Maybe I had inherited not just his fire but also his curse. By evening, we found another cheap motel, its neon sign flickering, the parking lot half empty. We checked in under false names and carried our bags inside. I sat by the window, staring at the parking lot while David spread documents across the bed. My nerves felt like wires stretched too tight. The burner phone buzzed. I lunged for it. Another message from Claire pinned, 3 blocks from Safe House. They are closing in. My blood froze. I typed back quickly, my hands shaking. Where? Can we help? No reply. Minutes crawled by like hours. I paced the room, whispering under my breath. She is out there. She is alone. We cannot just sit here. David's voice cut through. We cannot expose ourselves. That is what they want. If we run to her, we give them all 3 of us in one stroke. I turned on him, furious. So we just wait while she dies? His jaw tightened. We wait because if we fall now, everything dies, the evidence dies, your father's fight dies. Sometimes survival means choosing which piece you can save. I hated him in that moment, hated his cold pragmatism, but I also knew he was right. My stomach twisted with guilt as I sat back down, clutching my phone like it was her hand. Then, at last, a message appeared. Escaped. Barely. Heading underground. I exhaled so hard it hurt. I whispered her name like a prayer. Claire. David allowed himself the faintest smile. She is tougher than you think. That night, I dreamed of her. I saw her running through rain-soaked streets, her hood pulled tight, men in black chasing close behind. I saw her dart into a subway station, disappearing into the tunnels while their footsteps echoed after her. I woke drenched in sweat, the sheets tangled around me like restraints. The next morning, we kept moving. We avoided highways, stuck to back roads, small towns, places where faces blurred into anonymity. At a dusty diner in Georgia, I overheard 2 men at the counter talking about the leak. Probably fake, one of them said. Foreign interference, like the senator said. The other shrugged. Still, the documents looked real, makes you wonder. That was the crack David talked about. Small, but there. Doubt had teeth. Back in the car, I asked him, what if this is all we accomplish? A little doubt, a few whispers. What if it never grows bigger than that? He kept his eyes on the road. Then at least the lie is no longer perfect. Sometimes a fracture is enough to bring down a wall if you wait long enough. We drove in silence, the road stretching endlessly ahead. The sun dipped low, casting everything in gold, but all I could feel was the weight of the storm gathering behind us. That night, another message came from Claire. They know about you. You are leveraged. Stay dark. Trust no one. I stared at the words until they burned into my vision. I was bait. I was the hook they dangled to catch her. I looked at David, my voice barely more than a whisper. What if she is right? What if I am the reason they are still closing in? Maybe the only way to save her is for me to disappear. He turned to me, his expression hard as stone. Do not even think it. They killed your father to stop him. You vanish and they win again. We hold the line, Sophia, no matter the cost. I nodded, but my heart trembled, because deep inside I wondered if I had already doomed her just by existing. The next town we stopped in felt like it had been forgotten by time. A faded main street lined with shuttered stores, a gas station that looked older than me, and a motel with peeling paint where the neon sign buzzed like a dying insect. David chose it because it was quiet, because places like this rarely asked questions. I did not sleep that night. I lay on the creaky motel bed staring at the water stains on the ceiling, listening to the hum of the sign outside and the occasional truck roaring past on the highway. My father's voice haunted me again, but this time it was not calm or reassuring. It was urgent. You cannot trust everyone, Sophie. The knife that kills you will not always be the one you see coming. By morning, my nerves were frayed raw. David was hunched at the table, circling things on his map again, muttering names under his breath. His obsession both comforted and frightened me. He was the only anchor I had left, but I wondered if his anchor chain was dragging me deeper into the storm. The burner phone buzzed. My chest tightened as I snatched it up. A new message, but this one was not from Claire. It was from someone I had not expected in weeks. Ethan, need to see you. Urgent, I can help, meet me. Noon, coordinates attached. I stared at the message, my stomach twisting. Ethan, my colleague, my friend. The man I once thought could be more than that before everything fell apart. He had disappeared when the first threats came, leaving me with silence that cut deeper than words. And now, suddenly, here he was. David watched me from the table. Who is it? I hesitated, then said, Ethan. He says he wants to help. David's face darkened. And you believe that? I do not know, I admitted. But he was close to my father's work. He cared about it, about me. David leaned forward, his voice sharp. People care until the moment they are offered something bigger to betray you for. You think Silent Eagle does not know you trust him? This could be the trap. I hugged the phone to my chest. And what if it is not? What if he really does want to help? Can we afford to turn away anyone who offers a hand? David's silence was heavy. Finally, he said, You are going to go, no matter what I tell you. I nodded slowly. Yes, because I need to know. The meeting point was an abandoned factory on the edge of town. We arrived early, the place a skeleton of broken windows and rusted steel. David prowled the shadows, checking exits, muttering curses under his breath. I stood in the open, my coat pulled tight, my heart pounding. Ethan arrived right at noon. He looked thinner than I remembered, his hair disheveled, his suit rumpled. When he saw me, his face broke into something like relief. Sophia, he said, breathless. Thank God you are alive. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. Where have you been? You disappeared when I needed you. His eyes darted nervously to David, then back to me. I had to lay low, they were watching me, but I never stopped trying to help. I have contacts, people who can get your story further safer, but I need you to trust me. David's voice was a growl. Convenient timing. Why now? Ethan ignored him, focusing only on me. Because the walls are closing in. You are running out of time. I can get you to someone who will protect you, who will make sure your father's story goes public without being twisted. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. His eyes were the same warm eyes I remembered, filled with the same urgency I once trusted. But then I saw it, just a flicker. The way his hand lingered near his jacket pocket. The way he shifted slightly like a man waiting for a signal. David saw it too. He stepped closer, his voice low and deadly. You are not here alone, are you? Ethan froze. His lips parted as if to protest, but before he could, a noise cracked through the factory, boots on concrete. David shoved me hard. Down. We dove behind a rusted beam as the first figures poured through the doorway. Dark suits, cold eyes, Silent Eagle, guns drawn, moving with precision. Ethan stood frozen, caught between us and them. His eyes flickered with something guilt, maybe shame, but not enough to stop what he had done. I shouted, my voice breaking. Why, Ethan? Why would you do this? He looked at me, his face twisted. Because they promised me it would end if I gave them you. I just wanted it to stop, Sophia. I could not live like this anymore. The words cut deeper than any blade. David yanked me to my feet. We are leaving, now. Gunfire erupted, shattering glass echoing through the steel skeleton of the factory. We ran, ducking behind beams, slipping through shadows. My heart hammered, each step a desperate prayer. We burst through a side door into the blinding daylight. David grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the car we had hidden nearby. Behind us, shouts rang out, bullets pinging off metal. We dove inside, the engine roaring to life. David slammed his foot down, the tires screeching as we tore away from the factory. I twisted in my seat, watching as Ethan stood in the doorway, a broken figure framed by shadows. He had betrayed me, and yet part of me still wanted to believe he had meant it when he said my name like a prayer. The road blurred beneath us, my chest tight, my eyes burning. I whispered to myself, I cannot trust anyone, not anymore. David's hands clenched on the wheel. Now you understand, trust will get you killed. From here on out, it is just you, me, and the truth. I nodded, but inside I felt something splinter. A piece of me had died in that factory, the piece that still wanted to believe in loyalty, in love, in something worth clinging to. Silent Eagle had taken my father. Now they had taken Ethan too, twisting him into another weapon against me, and I knew they would not stop until they took everything. The factory gunfire still echoed in my skull long after we had escaped. My ears rang with every shot, every shard of glass exploding above my head. Ethan's face haunted me, his eyes full of guilt, his words burning like acid in my chest. I just wanted it to stop, Sophia. Betrayal had a taste. It was bitter, metallic, the flavor of blood you cannot swallow. David drove us hard out of town, the old car rattling, his knuckles white on the wheel. The road ahead stretched endless, lined with pine trees that blurred into shadows as dusk fell. Neither of us spoke for miles. Silence sat heavy between us, thicker than the smoke from his cigarettes. Finally, I whispered, "He was my friend, I trusted him." David exhaled slowly. "And he sold you. That is what trust costs in this game." I wanted to scream at him for his coldness, but I could not. Because he was right, my chest ached with the weight of that truth. The burner phone buzzed against my leg. I fumbled for it, my hands trembling. A coded message flashed. "Meet tonight. Safe house coordinates. Urgent. Claire." I almost cried seeing her name. "It is her. She wants us to meet tonight." David's jaw tightened. "It could be a trap." "It is Claire," I snapped. "She is the only one left I can believe in. If we do not go, we lose everything." He sighed, his eyes still on the road. "Then we go. But if something feels wrong, you follow my lead. Do you understand?" I nodded, though fear twisted in my gut. The safe house was hidden in the bones of an old church on the edge of another forgotten town. Its steeple had collapsed long ago, the stained glass shattered, but the heavy doors still stood. We parked a block away and approached on foot. My heart pounded with each step. Inside, the air was damp and smelled of dust and ash. Candles flickered in the corners, casting long shadows across broken pews. There she was, Claire. She looked even thinner than before, her clothes torn, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. But when she saw us, she managed a tired smile. "You made it." I rushed forward, pulling her into a fierce embrace. "I thought you were gone. I thought they had you." She pulled back, her gaze steady. "They almost did, twice, but I still have breath, and that means I still have fight." David crossed his arms. "We nearly got slaughtered thanks to your friend Ethan." Claire's expression hardened. "I know, I heard. Silent Eagle has infiltrated everywhere, even the circles closest to you. That is why we cannot afford another mistake." I swallowed hard. "So what now? We cannot keep running forever." Claire glanced at both of us, then lowered her voice. "Now we strike back. Harder. The documents you gave me were enough to open the crack, but not to shatter the wall. I have more records I pulled before they chased me out. Wire transfers, surveillance orders, names. If we release it all at once, we can drown them before they can bury it." David's brow furrowed. "Dump it all and you paint a target on your back bigger than any of us have seen." She shrugged. "The target is already there. Might as well make it worth the shot." Her words lit a fire in me. For so long I had been running, reacting, surviving. For the first time, I felt like maybe we had a chance to push back. "We do it," I said firmly. "For my father, for everyone they have silenced." Claire's eyes softened. "Then you will need to prepare yourselves. Once this goes live, there is no going back. They will come with everything they have." David leaned on the broken pew, lighting another cigarette. "Let them. The more desperate they are, the more mistakes they make." We stayed in that ruined church for hours, hunched over Claire's laptop powered by a car battery she had rigged. She showed us files, each one another nail in Silent Eagle's coffin. Payments to mercenaries. Surveillance logs on senators and journalists. Signatures of men who still smiled for cameras while their pens signed death warrants in the dark. Reading them made me sick. But it also made me burn. This was the proof my father had died for. The proof they had killed to keep buried. At one point I looked up and whispered, if he had lived to see this, would he have been proud? Or would he have told me to walk away before it swallowed me too? Claire touched my hand gently. "He would be proud. And terrified for you, that is how love works." Her words brought tears I had been holding back for weeks. I wiped them quickly, forcing myself to focus. We worked late into the night, piecing everything together, planning how to release it so it could not be silenced. Claire suggested multiple drops, independent journalists, encrypted networks, even foreign outlets. "They cannot kill the truth if it blooms everywhere at once," she said. But as dawn neared, a noise outside froze us. The crunch of gravel beneath tires, the low hum of engines. David killed the laptop instantly. "They found us." My chest tightened. "How? We were careful." "Careful is never enough," he muttered, pulling a gun from his jacket. Claire's face was pale in the candlelight, but her eyes were steady. "We finish this tonight or we die trying." The sound of doors slamming shut echoed through the empty churchyard. Shadows moved beyond the broken windows. Silent Eagle had come. I looked at David, then Claire, my pulse racing like thunder. For the first time since this began, I was not just running, I was ready to fight. The sound of car doors slamming shut outside the old church was like thunder rolling through my bones. I held my breath, listening. Boots crunched across gravel. Voices barked short commands. The shadows beyond the broken windows grew darker, thicker. They were here. Silent Eagle. My hands shook as I gripped the strap of the bag filled with documents. Everything we had, everything my father had died for, was inside. If we lost it now, his death would mean nothing but silence. David crouched low by the window, pistol steady in his hand. He looked calm, but I could see the vein pulsing in his neck. "They know we are inside," he whispered. "They will not wait long." Claire closed the laptop, sliding it into her pack, her movements precise, practiced. "We hold them off long enough to slip out the back. Once the files are out of here, nothing else matters." I wanted to believe her voice, steady and sure, but the fear in her eyes betrayed her. She knew as well as I did we were outnumbered, outgunned, and already cornered. The first command came from outside, amplified by a megaphone, a man's voice, cold and professional. "This is your only chance. Come out with your hands visible. Surrender now and you will not be harmed." The lie was so clean I almost laughed. They wanted us dead. Surrender would only save them the trouble of chasing us. David spat on the floor. "Not a chance," my heart pounded. "If we fight, we die." He turned, his eyes sharp. "If we surrender, we die slower." The doors shuddered under the weight of a battering ram. Wood splintered, dust raining from the frame. Claire pulled a small revolver from her coat and checked the cylinder. "We make them bleed for every inch," she muttered. The doors burst open. Figures poured in black suits, rifles raised, eyes hidden behind tinted glasses. Silent Eagle moved like a single machine, precise and merciless. David fired first. The crack of his pistol echoed through the church, the smell of gunpowder filling the air. One of the agents fell, the others ducking for cover behind pews. Gunfire erupted, wood splintering, glass shattering. I threw myself behind a fallen beam, my pulse a roaring drumbeat in my ears. "Move!" David shouted. "Back door." Claire grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the rear of the church. Bullets slammed into the walls, sending chunks of plaster flying. I stumbled, clutching the bag tight, every nerve screaming at me to run faster. We reached the back, but the door was chained shut, rusted links glinting in the flickering candlelight. Claire cursed, fumbling with a lockpick. "They are coming," I cried. David appeared beside us, firing another shot to keep the agents pinned. 30 seconds, Claire, or we are corpses." Her hands worked furiously, the pick scraping metal. My breath came in sharp gasps, each second stretching into forever. Finally, the chain snapped loose, the door creaking open into the night. We bolted outside into the cold air, sprinting across the churchyard. Shouts followed us, then more gunfire. Dirt kicked up at my heels, sparks flying as bullets struck stone. David shoved me behind a crumbling wall. Cars 2 blocks down, we run, no stopping. Claire panted beside me, her face pale but determined. "If one of us falls, the others keep moving. Do you understand?" "No," I shouted, shaking my head. "We all get out or none of this means anything." She gripped my face, her eyes burning. "If you fall, Sophia, the truth dies. You carry your father's fire. You cannot let it end here." Her words cut deeper than the bullets flying past us. We ran again, weaving through the ruins, the agents closing fast. David dropped behind for a moment, firing controlled shots, buying us seconds. Claire and I reached the street, my lungs on fire, my legs trembling with every step. The car was ahead, hidden beneath the shadow of a collapsed billboard. I almost cried when I saw it. But then headlights flared at the far end of the street, blinding us. Another vehicle roared toward us, engines screaming. "They are cutting us off," I yelled. David sprinted up, grabbed my arm, and shoved me toward the car. "Get in!" We dove inside, Claire sliding behind the wheel. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. Tires screeched as she floored the gas. The pursuing vehicle swerved, chasing us down the narrow road. Bullets slammed into the trunk, glass shattering. I ducked low, clutching the bag of evidence against my chest. "They are not stopping." David twisted in his seat, firing out the window. Sparks flew as bullets struck the pursuing car. For a moment it swerved, slowed, but then it came harder, ramming our bumper. The car jolted, nearly throwing us into the ditch. "Hold on," Claire shouted, yanking the wheel. We skidded around a corner, the tires screaming. The pursuing car clipped a streetlight, sparks showering the pavement, but it kept coming. I could barely breathe. "We cannot outrun them," David's jaw tightened. "Then we do not, we outfight them." He reached into the glove box, pulling out a small homemade device, wires taped around a metal cylinder. My stomach dropped. "What is that?" I demanded. "Insurance," he said flatly. "Lean back." He lit the fuse and tossed it out the window. The device bounced across the pavement, sparks trailing. A second later, the night exploded, flames engulfing the road, the pursuing car swerving wildly before slamming into a pole. The shockwave rattled our car, but Claire held steady, driving us farther into the darkness. My ears rang, my heart hammered, but for the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. We sped into the night, the church and the wreckage fading behind us. Silence filled the car, heavy and raw. Finally, I whispered, "We cannot keep running forever. One day they will corner us and we will not get out." Claire's eyes stayed on the road. "Then we make sure the truth is out before that day comes." David exhaled smoke from another cigarette, his voice calm, almost cold. "That day is coming sooner than you think." I held the bag tight, staring out into the endless night. For the first time, I felt both unstoppable and utterly doomed. The night we escaped the church, I thought I had seen the worst Silent Eagle could throw at us. But the real war began after that. Once the first shot was fired, there was no turning back. We were no longer running, we were tearing holes in the machine, and the machine wanted blood. For days we stayed on the move, sleeping in cars, in barns, in rooms borrowed from strangers who asked no questions. Claire worked relentlessly on her laptop, bouncing signals across servers, encrypting files, preparing for the release. David gathered what little supplies he could find, weapons, cash, burner phones. And me, I carried my father's ghost on my shoulders, whispering to me each time I thought I could not take another step. One night, as we hid in a cabin deep in the woods, Claire turned her screen toward me. "It is ready," she said. "Everything. Not just Waverly, not just Silent Eagle. All of it." The documents were endless: contracts, bank records, surveillance orders, names of men and women who smiled for cameras in daylight and signed death in the dark. And at the center of it all, one name circled again and again. Not a rival, not an enemy, an ally. Senator Charles Hammond. I stared at the name until my vision blurred. "No," I whispered. "He was my father's friend, his closest ally. He gave the eulogy at his funeral." Claire's voice was steady but heavy. "He gave the order, Sophia. He was the one who signed the papers. Your father was never betrayed by his enemies. He was betrayed by the man he trusted most." The room spun. My chest ached. Images flooded back, Hammond shaking my father's hand, Hammond's voice breaking at the memorial, Hammond promising me he would continue my father's work. Lies, all of it lies. I pressed my fists to my head. I cannot do this. I cannot face it. David knelt in front of me, his eyes cold but firm. "You do not have a choice. The truth is never what you want it to be, but it is still the truth." Tears burned my eyes, but I forced myself to look again at the files. The proof was undeniable. My father had died because his friend chose power over loyalty. That was the final fracture. Whatever illusions I had left about justice, about trust, about politics, they shattered then. The release went out at dawn. Claire hit the button and the files spread like wildfire. Independent outlets, foreign press, encrypted networks, social platforms. It was everywhere within minutes, impossible to bury, impossible to silence. The world reacted fast. Some denied it, calling it lies. Others demanded answers. Protests filled the streets of Washington, people shouting Hammond's name, demanding his resignation. Waverly, too, his mask cracking under the weight of the documents. Silent Eagle, once hidden, now dragged into the light. But light did not save us. By noon, Hammond himself went on air, his voice calm, his smile perfect. "These accusations," he said, "are dangerous distortions. This is an attempt to weaken the government, to divide our people. I will not step down." Watching him twist the truth again made me want to break the television. But behind the cameras, I knew he was cornered. The evidence was too much, too clear. It would spread no matter what he said. We should have felt victorious. But instead, I felt empty. That night, Silent Eagle struck one last time. They came for us at the cabin, a desperate attempt to cut the head off the story. Gunfire tore through the woods. David fought like a man with nothing left to lose, shouting for us to run. I dragged Claire through the trees, my lungs burning, the documents already in the world but my life still hanging by a thread. When it was over, David was gone. We never saw him fall, but the silence that followed told me everything. He had bought us time with his last breath. Claire and I stumbled out of the forest at dawn, alive but broken. The files were still out there, unstoppable now. Hammond's career was finished. Waverly, too. Silent Eagle fractured under the weight of exposure, its operatives scattered, hunted by the same system that had once protected them. Justice had come. At least the version of it the world would see. But standing there in the gray morning light, I felt nothing but hollow. My father's name would be cleared. His death would be seen for what it was. And yet he was still gone. David was gone. Ethan had betrayed me. Hammond had destroyed everything we had believed in. Claire touched my shoulder. You did it, you gave him justice. I shook my head. No, I gave the world the truth, but justice? Justice would have been him alive. She had no answer for that. In the weeks that followed, hearings filled the news. Hammond resigned in disgrace. Waverley vanished from the public eye. Silent Eagle dissolved, at least on paper. People called it a victory. They called me brave. They said my father would be proud. But at night, when I lay awake staring at the ceiling of yet another safe house, I wondered if I had simply become what I hated most. Someone who had traded love for truth, ideals for survival. Someone who could never trust again. And yet, beneath all the scars, something small still burned. A spark that refused to die. My father had once told me, the truth is heavy, Sophie, but if you carry it, someone else will not have to. I carried it now. Broken, scarred, exhausted, but still standing. The machine had lost this round. The world was cracked open, even if only a little. And maybe that was enough, because cracks spread. And one day, if people kept pushing, maybe the whole wall would finally fall.